Hello, my fellow readers. This is iDarkSymphony777 with another fan fiction reading. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, and leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story. And that's about it. So, the story I'm doing a reading of is I'm Sorry, John by Takoya. It is a Garfield fanfiction, and it's a specific type of Garfield fanfiction. I have all these stories I'm going to be doing, but I'm starting with Garfield because it's no ordinary Garfield. This is Garfield. For those of you who don't know what Garfield is, I don't remember the exact year, but randomly in the middle of I think around 2011, 2012. I'm guessing. I'm just completely guessing. This guy randomly started uploading like these very, very spooky pictures of Garfield as like these demons. Like let me actually show you. Alright, so this is actually one of the original pictures right here of Garfield, and he became this demented Garfield that's hunting John for lasagna, of course. And he became very popular, and then he literally became uber popular with YouTuber Lumpy Touch, who made actual animations based off these drawings. And now there's like an actual Reddit just to show off actual pictures of like different types of Garfields, and Lumpy Touch did like a horoscope themed Garfield thing. I really like some of them. I didn't like some of them. I really did not like the Aries. I thought that thing was look derpy. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of Garfield. And I saw the picture. I saw the name because the actual name of the Reddit is I'm Sorry, John. So it's like, is this a Garfield story? So I thought, hey, why not? So let's get started. It began with a whisper, a mere hushed voice in the night. Something one could have reasoned to have been a creak in the floorboards. Maybe an animal taking a step, perhaps. Garfield, John reasoned, it could have been. If it only been so simple. John awoke in a sweat, throwing the blanket off himself, unsure the whole time of why he was so panicked. He looked around his room and took a breath. What the hell? He said aloud, calming down and shaking his head. Standing up, he made his way into the bathroom to get ready for the day. A moment later, as he reached to grab his razor, he realized it was not where he normally left it. Strange, he thought. Paying it no further attention, he resumed his daily routine. Upon exiting the bathroom, he immediately noticed how his dresser was on the other side of the room. He shook his head and widened his eyes. But what? Perhaps he was simply confused. It had always been there, the basic brown container garments. If only John understood. The rather mediocre man of an entirely average demeanor sighed as he adjusted his second favorite tie. Unable to find his blue and most prized tie, he chose to settle instead for this one. His mind wandered to the strange occurrences of the morning. It was almost as if someone had rearranged his belongings. Impossible, he reasoned. Liz was away on vacation with her family, and Odie had tagged along at Liz's insistence, wanting to show the dog off to her own family. For now, it was just him and Garfield. How could this have happened? He resolved to better organize his belongings when he returned from work. John sighed again. Mondays were the worst. Mondays are the worst. That's why I prefer Fridays off. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Garfield always seemed to be most agitated as well, for whatever reason. It was almost as if they were an omen of negative emotion. They always held such a sense of foreboding, John contemplated. Like when they arrive, the worst is destined to come. The day when you were faced with the worst of the week had to offer. For the average man that John was, the day of reckoning. How right he was. Reaching for his nightstand that was for some reason on the opposite side of the bed, as John remembered, he checked his phone for the time. He wouldn't want to be late after all. He glanced at the time, 8:23. Not bad, he thought. As his eyes wandered slightly below the numerals, though, those same eyes widened considerably. What? He blinked. He blinked again, and then pressed the power button of the phone to deactivate it. Furrowing his brows in thought, he pressed the button again. 8:24 a.m., 3:21:10. Saturday. What the fuck? He uttered in absolute confusion. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing, one side of him said. He desperately began recalling what he had done the past weekend, which was evidently the current weekend to no avail. He swore it was Monday, and yet the device in his hand was telling him otherwise. It was simply impossible. Perhaps his phone was just simply wrong. Smoothly sliding the gadget into his pocket, he dragged himself over to his desk, taking a seat perpendicular to where he originally sat. The pet owner pressed the power key on his laptop, desperately wishing that the computer would boot up more quickly. He briefly entertained the idea of investigating another laptop entirely. No, though. He had to save up money for an engagement ring for Liz, he reasoned. Eventually, however, a familiar desktop appeared before him. Glancing to the bottom right corner, he saw the unmistakable truth of the matter. It was, in fact, Saturday. He slid back in his plush leather chair, intensely contemplating the revelation. It was undeniable now. It was indeed Saturday. John sighed softly, ashamed that he had wakened so early in the day. Tradition had it set that he would have at least another several hours of peaceful rest. Now, however, his early rise had put an end to that. A shame, truly, that it would be best to make the best of the situation, he reasoned. Briskly standing up from his office chair, changing into his more casual attire, he scratched his chin and then exited his bedroom. What would he do with his free time, he wondered. A distinct yawn made itself quite aware immediately upon his exiting his dwelling. Sprinting off... why did I say sprinting? I meant springing. Springing off the kitchen counter, John's most precious cat had made himself known as he typically would, though John could have sworn there was more of an accusatory glare in his feline eye. I'm sorry, John. It was almost as if he heard the orange cat speak to him, though he had also heard soft meowing noises as the voice penetrated his mind. Ashamed then, he disregarded it. Are you hungry, Garfield? He asked the cat with a smile as he usually would. A mad grin stretched from side to side upon the now Eldritch cat's expression. Insatiably, John. John was not only seeing shit, but now apparently also hearing shit too. He smiled rather awkwardly as he saw the cat meow with fangs longer than he could have remembered. He shook his head from side to side, as if attempting to purge some kind of negative thought. Opening the refrigerator, he was shocked to see that it was full of lasagna. It wasn't unusual to see lasagna in the household's refrigerator, but what in the hell happened to everything else? All the shelves were filled with the meat, cheese, and pasta that created Garfield's favorite dish. He closed the refrigerator. Opening again, he saw milk, a couple of vegetables and fruits, sausage, lunch meat, and other basic necessities that would be in an average household, as well as, of course, the leftover lasagna from the night before. He sighed in relief. It seemed he actually wasn't going crazy after all. Pulling up the lasagna and fetching a plate to place on, he turned around. Garfield was already on the counter, despite never making a noticeable sound. Hurry, I am famished, John. The cat spoke to him as he stretched his back in the way a feline would. John took note of the movements of the cat. It was impossible to truly discern what was happening, at least in his own mind. He must have been going crazy. It was the only possible explanation, as the cat talking to him was obviously unexplainable. He set the lasagna on the counter for it to be devoured in nearly an instant. It was almost as if time had skipped, actually. John turned around and the lasagna was simply gone, the plate being wiped clean, as if the lasagna was never there. John looked onward, puzzled at the development that unfolded before him. Locking eyes with the tangerine-colored creature, John awkwardly began, Do you want more lasagna, Garfield? He had asked with an even more pathetic tone than he would typically. The bizarre events unfolding before him had truly puzzled John. What in the flying fuck was happening? He hoped that it would end soon, whatever this was. This is only beginning, John, the cat laughed. But yes, fetch me more lasagna, human. John paused. This must have been a dream. Maybe a nightmare, he reasoned. He'd just give the cat his desired food, and perhaps return to his room. Simple, foolproof. Garfield reveled in the simple thoughts John had, of course. John turned the refrigerator and opened it, revealing Odie's decapitated head on top of a large plate of steaming, fresh lasagna. Ugh. John had lost balance then, and fell on the kitchen tiles. His eyes locked to the dog's head, which had adorned the scrumptious pile of meat, cheese, and pasta. It was at this point Garfield decided to make his move. Effortlessly leaping just behind John, the orange cat grinned an infamous Cheshire grin before standing on his hind paws, lifting his chin, as well as clapping his paws at John. He smiled deviously. I trust you understand, John. Garfield spoke ominously. Jonathan Arbuckle didn't know what to think, of course. Not many people would be able to cope with a situation quite like this. Here was Garfield, his cat, speaking to him. Not only was Garfield speaking to him, but he was standing unnaturally facing him. And if he couldn't get more bizarre, today was Saturday and not Monday. Now, even worse, within the refrigerator lay the severed head of Odie, his dog. It appeared that he wasn't dead long. Blood seeped through. In fact, it was rather fresh. John could practically feel the gaze of Odie upon him as he sat there mortified. This was horrible in every way. Who did this? Who? As John sat there contemplating the horror of the situation, maniacal laughing pierced the silence of his thoughts. Slowly turning around, he saw the atmosphere around him darken immensely. As he looked out the window, he saw the sun was already setting, and it was setting fast. He stared for several seconds, and he realized that yes, in just a couple minutes the sun faded from high above the sky to being invisible. In just a matter of minutes. That again was impossible, and yet it was happening. He rotated his body on the floor further, and what he saw horrified him even more. Looming behind him, with a grin most unnatural, blood dripped down the menacing figure's expression. This thing's fur was orange, yes, but a hint of red permeated its filthy fur. Teeth that were far longer and far sharper than any house cat should have glistened in the little amount of light that was now in the room. John felt as if he was gazing into the void as he looked into the creature's demonic eyes. Garfield sat there on his stomach, grinning, before suddenly crimson tentacles flew out from underneath himself. Chaos quickly ensued. A pillar supporting the house was destroyed, as was a portion of the roof which exposed the night sky above them. Garfield then stood up once again, the tentacles crashing through the household, as he marched forward as no cat should. A blood-red tendril grabbed the decapitated head that belonged to Odie and threw it at John's feet. I had hoped it wouldn't come to this, John. John screamed and quickly scurried backwards, away from the beast in front of him. What the fuck? His back was against the wall now, and he was face to face with the apparition himself. As the cat, if it could be called that, marched forward, John saw the glimmer of the moonlight reflect off of Odie's dead eyes. Was this going to be what became of him when Garfield reached him? All I wanted was for you to understand, John. John trembled in fear, unsure of what was going to happen next. But I realized, the demonic voice echoed throughout the now devastated household. You can't understand unless I show you. Garfield now stood roughly 10 feet away from John, tentacles still whipping around wildly, destroying everything around the both of them. Isn't that right, John? John could barely understand the words that left the monster's decrepit mouth. He just wanted his nightmare to end. He didn't want to know what Garfield had to show him. It was getting worse and worse. At first, there were some inconsistencies throughout the day, but now, this was worse. Much, much worse. Suddenly, however, all the tentacles stopped their movements and retracted themselves into Garfield's stomach in a way that couldn't be explained. Then the monstrosity pointed what would be its index finger to ground between him and John. And after a second, Garfield's mouth began to open up unnaturally. His bloody jaw extended far greater than any animal should ever. Crimson tentacles then rushed out of the beast's mouth and began to savagely beat the ground right in front of John, ripping it up piece by piece. The floor began to sink in on itself. A hole appeared that spanned a width of 5 feet in diameter, with the tentacles rushing out of Garfield's mouth and encircling the sinkhole. Before long, the space between John and Garfield had become filled with blood-colored tentacles. This is the only way, John. And then, much to John's utter dismay, he felt a slimy sensation on his leg. A tentacle had gripped John, and he could feel the pull. He was being dragged inside the hole. What are you doing? The pull wasn't that powerful yet, but perhaps that only added to the terror. Before long, though, the grasping sensation intensified, and John was looked up at Garfield, tears falling from his face as the world around him ended. Where are you taking me? John closed and opened his eyes. Before him, he saw Garfield as he typically appeared. He looked amused, as creepy as that was, though as a tentacle tugged on his leg again, and he looked above him and saw the roof was still destroyed. Doom was still coming for him. The tendril gripped him harder and pulled him deeper. He was about to fall in completely. He looked up as he was pulled under, and all he saw was Garfield up above him, grinning madly once again. I'm sorry, John. So that is I'm Sorry, John by Tequila. I actually like this story. It's horror, it's supernatural. The vagueness was just right. You don't know what John... You're supposed to be John. Usually when it comes to like the Garfield sort of things, the reader or the watcher is supposed to be John. You're supposed to see yourself as John. John is supposed to be the author avatar, so to speak, in this case. And I really like that the author did, in fact, give that kind of sense, that sense that you are John in the story. Like, you don't know what's going on. You see, it starts off very mild, like with like the date changing. It's like, okay, nothing wrong. And then he sees Garfield, and then it slowly kind of gets darker and darker, more Eldritch, more like Cthulhu mythos sort of thing. And then we see like a flash of insanity, like the implication that, okay, maybe he's not imagining things with the lasagna, with him opening up the fridge, seeing all the lasagna, him closing the fridge and opening up, and it's just normal. And so we get, kind of a little reprieve. Like, is this like the whole implication of whether or not this is real? I really love that aspect. I do love the ending, like him slowly getting tugged, and he's not even that powerful. It even says it's the pull isn't powerful, and he's so in panic he can't muster the strength to like wedge himself out, and then he sees Garfield like normal, and Garfield, and then one final like image of John thinking, oh, is this all this real? And then he completely looks up, sees the roof still gone. It's like, no, this is not. This is still real. Gives a sense of genuine horror. Like, I wasn't scared of the story, but as a horror story, this is actually really well done. As a supernatural, this is really well done. I do think that it was a tad too short. I honestly think you could have stretched this out a little bit more, but this is not a complaint. Like, this is actually optional. You can extend this if you wanted to, but it's fine as it is. I wouldn't change anything. If you want to make this longer and try and stretch it out another, like, honestly, you can stretch it out another 1,000 words, another 1,500 words if you wanted to, but you don't have to. On a scale of 1 to 5, I actually would give this a 5. It's a genuine Garfield story, with the author perfectly writing it as you are the person reading it is John, and with everything going on, the subtle tones slowly shifting, and then we see maybe it's not real, and then we don't know what's going on. It perfectly captures what I think a Garfield story should be: horror yet surreal, real yet unreal. So it perfectly captures that balance. A 5 out of 5. Tequila does a really good story. So this has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.